My husband, Charles, tells me he's going to marry the woman he's been seeing and asks for a divorce. Let's not waste time with property division. Just leave quickly. Sharon taunts me as if she's relishing in my misery. Donald, too, is infatuated with a woman he met at a bar. They don't want to live with me. I'll leave, just as you wish. But before that, I'll give you a piece of my mind. My name is Joy Lynn, named with the hope of being blessed with much joy. Joy in Joy Lynn. I'm a 50-year-old woman whose life hasn't been as joyful as I'd hoped. But now my days are filled with happiness, so I can look back and laugh at the past. Let me take you back to when I was 35. I was about to celebrate my 10th wedding anniversary with Charles. We hadn't been blessed with children, and I found it somewhat painful to hear comments from those around us like, "Do you have any kids?" and "Children are wonderful, you know." Conversations with Charles had dwindled, partly because he had been promoted a few years earlier, became busier with work, and traveled frequently. I was working too, so we hardly saw each other. No wonder we didn't have children. Well, this too is a form of marriage, and it's easier on our minds. Having children or not, it doesn't matter. That's what I thought. One day, our family grew in a way we hadn't expected. It wasn't an angelic baby that arrived. Instead, it was parents-in-law that seemed like demons from hell. Apparently, right after we got married, the parents-in-law had been constantly telling Charles that they wanted to live with us. Charles weighed the hassle of living together against the hassle of continually refusing. As a result, he decided that living together would be less of a hassle. Surprisingly rational, or not. Hey, I didn't agree to live together. According to Charles. I'm hardly ever home, so it's fine. It might be fine for you. But still, as Charles said, it's fine if the parents-in-law are good people. I had a hard time with these parents-in-law, even before we started living together. They were the ones who persistently asked me, "When are you having kids?" Sharon would always say, "The more children you have, the better," every time we met. But you only gave birth to Charles, right? Living with such parents-in-law? It's a stomach-churning story. I wonder how living together will turn out. My expectations were quickly betrayed, not in a good way. It turned out even worse than I thought. Donald solemnly declared as we started living together, "We won't give you any pension or living expenses." Then Sharon continued with a smile, "Let's go with that arrangement." Wait, what kind of arrangement is that? Charles also said something like, "We both work, so we can manage without receiving living expenses." So Charles is one of them, too. I had never been particularly dissatisfied with Charles until now. I didn't expect much from a husband even before we got married. I thought a husband who doesn't get angry easily and works hard was good enough. But now, a wave of complaints that I never had before came rushing in. Moreover, as I lived with the parents-in-law for a while, I gradually understood the reason they wanted to live with us. Donald would often go out somewhere at night. I believed him when he said he was going out to drink with friends. But then, I found a point card from what you'd call a nightclub and a business card with Nancy written on it in the laundry. There are various types of bars, but this was clearly a service industry that directly satisfies a man's desires. I see, he likes Nancy. I can't believe he's still so energetic at his age, I thought. Of course, I meant it in a bad way. No wonder he can't give us living expenses. He's spending it on Nancy. It can't be helped. No way. On the other hand, Sharon gradually started to harass me. Moreover, she was cunning and intensified the harassment gradually. So much so that even I didn't notice at first. At first, I thought she was being kind. I could have endured it if it had just been about the way I fold laundry or season my cooking. But there were times when Sharon called me by the name of Charles's ex-girlfriend. Every time Sharon would apologize, saying, "I remember her strongly because she was the first girlfriend Charles introduced to me, too. I didn't do it on purpose. I'm sorry." At first, I thought, Sharon is old, so maybe such things happen. But as it continued, I realized something was off. Speaking of which, every time I took a shower, the bathroom was always dirty. I initially thought the mess in the bathroom was from Charles and the others who had gone in before, but no one complained about the bathroom being dirty, so without a doubt, it must have been Sharon who was in before me. There were other instances too, like when Sharon mistakenly, thinking everyone had already bathed on a snowy day, unplugged the bathtub, leaving me to shower in the freezing cold. She also once took my favorite necklace from the closet without asking and then lost it. Each time, Sharon would say, "I didn't do it on purpose. I just wasn't thinking. I'm sorry." While it's possible to accidentally shower or call someone by the wrong name, taking jewelry without permission is not something that can be brushed off as a mere oversight. I began to suspect that maybe this was all intentional harassment aimed at me. When I saw Sharon angrily sitting at the dining table saying, "My dinner is late because Joy Lynn came home late," I finally realized it was indeed harassment, albeit subtle. Come to think of it, Sharon hasn't done any housework since she came to our home. She throws her socks inside out into the laundry and tosses bottles into the trash without removing the labels, adding minor inconveniences every time. She complains if meals are late and if the sheets are messy, and sometimes she even throws things. I finally understood. Our home was indeed graced by the arrival of a baby. 2 of them, in fact, both big and delightfully stubborn. Exhausted from my job as a caregiver, all I wanted was to quickly escape this situation and go to bed, so I kept silently tolerating Sharon's behavior. I didn't have the energy to argue with anyone when I returned home. I wanted to rest as quickly as possible, even if it was just for a moment. While I was exhausted and didn't notice at first, it seemed that Sharon knew about Donald's night outings. When an actress appeared on TV, Sharon persistently asked Donald, "Donald, don't you like girls like her? You do, don't you?" The actress's name was Nancy, the same as the girl from the bar. Donald looked pale. After that incident, I asked Sharon once, "Are you okay with Donald going out like that?" Sharon replied, "If I get a divorce, I'll be someone who has a divorce history at this age, right? That's miserable, and it looks bad to society. Of course I don't like it. But he's just playing with professionals at the bar, right? If he's not serious, I can accept it." She wasn't holding back from divorce because of her concern for Donald, but rather she feared becoming someone with a history of divorce. I couldn't understand it. Turning a blind eye to infidelity must be causing her significant internal stress. And Sharon's outlet for that stress was harassing me. By harassing me, not only could she vent her stress, but she could also avoid doing housework. It was like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I was certain. I knew why Sharon had insisted on living with Charles. Since living with the in-laws, Charles increasingly made excuses not to come home, saying he had to work overtime. This house was rotten from the roots to the pillars. At this rate, even I might end up crushed under the rotten floorboards. It happened one day, about 6 months after we started living together. Charles, who rarely had the same day off, said something unexpected. "Please, let's get a divorce." It was a bolt from the blue. It turns out Charles had been having an affair with a classmate for a long time. He even said he wanted to marry this person, and I had no clue. Apparently, they started dating just before he got promoted. I thought he was working hard for our sake, but could it have been for his classmate? Was it my fault for not paying attention to Charles's behavior, using my exhaustion as an excuse? I thought affairs only happened on TV, and to people like Donald. No, maybe it's natural for Charles to cheat, given that Donald does it too. "Once this house is ready, my girlfriend and I are moving in. You can take your things and leave," Charles declared. Sharon asked, "What's going to happen to us?" "You can stay. My girlfriend doesn't mind sharing," Charles responded. "What a nice girl. Joy Lynn, don't let her get away with it if she asks for property division. We're going to use this house and everything in it." Donald chimed in, "Yeah, she's a really good girl.
especially if she's cuter than Joy Lynn.
Sharon shot Donald a look as if to say, "There you go again with women." But Charles and Donald just laughed. "These people are hopeless," I replied. "All right, I'm fine with the divorce. There's a memorial ceremony in Atlanta soon, right? Can you wait until then?" "Planning on enjoying the feast at the memorial ceremony? Are you? How pathetic. There's no way I'm taking a woman who's divorcing me. Just leave already." Who's the pathetic one here? Who cares about the food? Despite everything, Sharon and I, the only women in the room and both cheated on, can't seem to get along. No, I was planning to move out on that day. Going back home is a bit embarrassing since I was cheated on. Finding a place and handling the paperwork takes time. I thought it would work out around then. Charles, not Sharon, replied condescendingly,
"If that's the case, fine."
"Cheating and then acting all high and mighty? Don't underestimate me. I'll destroy everything." A week passed, and the long-awaited day of revenge finally arrived. That day, my parents-in-law and Charles left the house early in the morning to attend a memorial ceremony in Atlanta. They planned to return by evening. All right then, let's give it a try. The garbage collection service I had hired arrived. I had them load all the furniture in the house into the truck. The sofa, the microwave, Charles and the parents-in-law's bed, and Sharon's clothes that had accumulated since moving in. Charles' favorite new vacuum cleaner, even the refrigerator and its contents, all of it gone. Ah, minimalism is wonderful. With each item thrown away, it felt like my troubles were disappearing. Next, the movers came to transport my important belongings to my new place. By evening, the house was empty. The front door made a sound. It seemed Charles and the others had returned. I decided to greet them one last time, as a good wife, and stood at the entrance with a smile.
"What? You're still here?"
Charles frowned openly. So did my parents-in-law. "Oh, that's harsh. It's the last time, so it's fine to see each other's faces before leaving, right? I wanted to see your face."
"Huh? You still care about me?"
Blushes slightly. He chuckles.
"What's the big deal? Fine. Let's have a meal together one last time, shall we?"
Charles, strangely in a good mood, heads towards the living room saying this, followed by Sharon, who looks exasperated, saying, "Charles is so sweet." Donald, on the other hand, turns to me with a proud look, saying,
"That's my son."
I'm baffled. Having a meal, huh? Would have been a nice way to part if there was anything left to eat.
"Huh? What?
The meaning of my words, Charles, upon opening the living room door, lets out a silent exclamation. Sharon, annoyed, peeks into the living room after Charles and exclaims just like him, "What? Ah!" Donald does the same.
Wait. Why the fridge? No, even the furniture, appliances too. Why is there nothing anywhere?
Of course, I threw them out. The house feels much bigger now, doesn't it? I thought it would be bad to leave old furniture for your new life with your girlfriend. Consider it my parting gift.
Threw them out? Why? Weren't you preparing to move?
I've already moved. You throw away things you don't need when you move, right? Have you forgotten? Most of the things we bought when we got married were purchased with my money. Nothing bad will happen just because I, who didn't need them, threw them away. At my words, Charles points at me, his mouth moving, but no words coming out. He seems too shocked to speak. With this, I'll forego any division of property. Well, there's hardly anything to divide anyway. Sharon, furious at my smile, says, "What have you done?" I'll return that phrase to your foolish son. There are limits to indecency, like cheating while having a wife and then saying to leave because you're remarrying. Wasn't your upbringing at fault?
How could you speak to me like that? You were such a terrible daughter-in-law.
Do you still consider yourself my mother-in-law? To me, you're just another old lady. I speak with a malicious smile, and Sharon mutters,
"So ungracious."
shaking with anger. It's a secret that seeing Sharon angry is starting to be a bit fun. Don't you remember? If I ask for division of this house, you can't refuse, can you? Without the house, where would you two strangers live? You sold your family home, right? Yes, the parents-in-law had sold their house when they moved in with us. We won't need it anymore, they had said. So this house was absolutely necessary for them. They sided with their son's affair over his wife, probably thinking, as long as there's a house with a housemaid, anything goes. Hearing my words, perhaps feeling rushed, Donald intervenes.
Well, let's settle this amicably.
Pretending to be a good person. Yes, let's do that. Let's proceed calmly, just like the old just like Donald suggests.
Exactly. You know what I'm talking about, Joy Lynn.
Of course. By the way, Donald, wasn't your cell phone broken today?
Oh yeah, I realized it after leaving the house. It wouldn't turn on. If charging doesn't work, I guess I'll have to consult the store.
There's no need for that. Your cell phone is right here. Saying that, I pulled Donald's cell phone from my pocket. Huh? 2 identical phones? What's going on? Donald is puzzled. I switched the phones just before you left today. The one I have is the real one, and the one you had is a used one I bought and removed the battery, so it won't turn on.
What?
Since you aren't tech-savvy, I thought you'd just give up easily thinking it's broken or out of battery. It seems like a huge success. Smiling, I get asked by Donald.
Why would you do that?
Why, you wonder?
Well, I have no clue.
Speaking of which, you received an email today from your beloved Nancy saying she had a good time the other day. You email each other daily, right? I'm so jealous of your close friendship.
What?
Donald gasps while Sharon glares at him. So, Donald, you were out with Nancy the other day. Woohoo! More lovey-dovey than with Sharon. But you should put a lock on your phone if you're cheating. You'll get caught easily.
Stop it. Joy Lynn, this...
But I thought cheating is wrong. Charles cheated on me, and it hurt. I know exactly how Sharon feels. So I did something nice at the end. I texted Nancy. I'm bored. Let's break up. She was furious. I was dealing with this old man because he conveniently gives me money. Good thing you broke up safely. Oh, by the way, this is Nancy. Sharon, your enemy. Take a good look. Saying that, I showed everyone a photo of Nancy and Donald as I returned the phone. That's when it happened. Charles showed a stern expression no one had seen before.
Why? My girlfriend is...
What? Everyone but Charles gasped.
What's going on, Charles? What are you to Nancy? No, that's my line, Dad. Why are you taking pictures with Nancy? Because I'm her boyfriend, obviously. No, Nancy is my girlfriend. Isn't your girlfriend your classmate? We just met at a bar and started hanging out.
Who would have thought that father and son were dating the same person? This development was also surprising for me. Ignoring Sharon and me, who were in shock, the men started a pointless argument about who was more suitable to be Nancy's boyfriend, which eventually escalated into a full-blown brawl, pulling each other's hair. The brawl ended when Charles pulled out a significant amount of Donald's precious thinning hair. After a glance at the soulless face of Donald, I loudly declared, "Well, I'm off to my new place. Thank you for everything. I'll be claiming compensation for the affair next time. Bye." I had said there would be no property division, but I didn't mean compensation. Sharon realized that this was a serious affair and, swinging the bag she was holding, began furiously beating Donald in a rage. Donald stood there, head hung low, as if he had been burnt out completely, unable to process everything happening all at once. Watching this living hell unfold beside me, I couldn't stop smiling as I hopped on my beloved scooter and left the scene. Although it's a far stretch in my mind, I felt like Tom Cruise in Top Gun. Oh, it's been a while since I've ridden down such a refreshing night road. This is the best. Later on, when I proposed divorce, including the alimony, Charles said,
"Please wait on the divorce."
"It seems that Sharon is also considering divorce, and there is a possibility that everyone might lose their homes or their circumstances might change, so he wants to save as much money as possible." He said things like,
"Don't you think it's pitiful for us, who once lived together, to face such a difficult situation?"
And,
"We need money now, but..."
I didn't care, so I proceeded with the divorce talks without discussion, and took as much money as I could get from Charles and his affair partner. When claiming the alimony, I felt a bit like an outlaw, but I hadn't done anything wrong. I had just done what was natural. Well, maybe tampering with someone's phone was slightly wrong. In the end, around the same time as our divorce, it seemed that Sharon also divorced Donald. Apparently, Donald and Nancy's affair had been going on for over 5 years, and Sharon couldn't forgive that they had a relationship in private as well. I don't quite understand why bar hopping is forgivable, but private relationships aren't. I thought there are various forms of marriage. Well, in the end, we're not married anymore, anyway. Donald was sued for alimony by Sharon, and Charles was sued for alimony by me, so the saying blood will out held true, and the in-laws are now all scattered. Sharon, having been cheated on by Donald, seemed to have grown to despise men in general, including Charles, who had abandoned me in a similar manner. As a result, Charles and Sharon, after the divorce, are slowly becoming distant, though they do have minimal conversations. Donald, jobless, turned to Charles for help but was rejected, as Charles himself was barely scraping by. Charles is juggling multiple jobs, while Sharon, who had been a housewife since her early marriage, is experiencing work for the first time with a part-time job. Donald became a part-time worker living in a cheap hotel. Charles, eager to marry Nancy, learned that she wasn't interested. Nancy saw both Charles and Donald as mere extensions of her bar work, as convenient sources of money. It turned out that Nancy had other men besides Charles in the same capacity. Charles, having been classmates with her, mistook her for being serious and believed she was his destiny. But in reality, it was a foolish and trivial story. In the end, both men were deemed unnecessary by Nancy, even as convenient sources of money, and were discarded. From my perspective, I thought, since I'm leaving, might as well destroy everything in the process, just as I aimed. I'm very satisfied having witnessed the spectacular collapse of a family. No one in that family valued each other, only caring about themselves. So the outcome was, in a way, inevitable. Essentially, they were a family in name only, lacking any compassion. Now I think it was good that I got away from that household. On the other hand, while I still come home exhausted from work every day, living alone has freed up my time as I no longer need to allocate it for someone else. I have more freedom than when I was married. Back when I was married, I hardly had time to meet my college friends, but now I can travel with them on my days off and even have time for my hobbies. In college, I was part of the choir, so I decided to join a karaoke club. It seems that one can continue to improve in music, no matter the age. I consistently win at the club's competitions and even earn cash prizes. Thanks to that, my wallet is always warmly filled. At the facility where I work, my colleagues suggested hosting a karaoke recreation event, since I'm good at it, and it was a huge hit. I received many compliments like, "You're so good," and was thrilled to bring smiles to the residents through my personal hobby, something I hadn't expected. By the way, my go-to performances are Unchained Melody and My Heart Will Go On. The lyrics of older songs are just so wonderful. I don't really understand recent songs, but I guess I should study up. Though my days aren't glamorous, I'm surrounded by friendly colleagues, trustworthy friends, and kind residents who feel like family beyond work boundaries. Finally, it seems like I've become the Joy Lynn I was meant to be. From now on, I aim to be someone who not only receives joy, but also shares it with others. Alright, let's do our best at work today. I'll wholeheartedly celebrate the residents' birthdays.
Wait, you're going to sleep in there? I was supposed to be house-sitting with my niece at my elder brother's house while he and his wife were on a trip. As we were joyfully discussing our plans for the following day, my niece reached for the closet door, signaling her intent to go to bed. She slid into the closet without a moment's hesitation, leaving me surprised. When I rushed to grab her arm, she looked up at me with a puzzled expression. I am a 24-year-old housewife named Melissa, and I have a brother who is 5 years older than me. We lost our parents early in life, and having always gotten along, we continued to support each other. That didn't change even after we each got married, and we still maintain close family ties. My in-laws are great, but they live in Alaska, a plane ride away, so we can't rely on them easily. My brother, Sam, and his wife had a shotgun wedding. After clashing with her parents, she has been estranged ever since. With no nearby relatives to rely on, our relationship has been one of mutual support without reserve. It was only strengthened when Sam and his wife had a daughter, and 4 years later, a girl was born to my family as well. The daughters, who lived in the same city, grew up close, almost like real sisters. As the years went by and my niece Sarah was about to turn 10, Sam told me about his plans for a 10th wedding anniversary trip. If it's okay with you, Melissa, could you look after Sarah while we're away? It's just a short overnight trip nearby, but we thought it'd be nice to spend some time alone. I was only too happy to oblige. When we discussed dates and when I asked when I should pick Sarah up, he shook his head as if I didn't understand. It seemed that he wanted me to stay over at his house with Sarah, concerned about leaving the house empty for security reasons. I teased him about being overly worried, but finally gave in. I decided to stay over alone, leaving my daughter, who still has a little anxiety about sleepovers, with my husband. The day of their anniversary trip came as planned, and I went to stay at Sam's house. I held Sarah's hand as we waved goodbye to her parents. She looked a bit uneasy, watching their backs, but our house-sitting adventure was about to begin. I originally planned to bring my daughter over and have my husband pick her up at bedtime, but Sarah adamantly refused, so I gave up. I know she enjoys playing with my daughter, and although she won't tell me why she doesn't want her here today, there must be some reason. So, to cheer up a disappointed Sarah, I promised to take her to my house to play after breakfast the next day, which made her eyes light up. Sarah usually tailors her play with my daughter, so I brought some slightly complex games and puzzles that adults could enjoy as well. As I spread them out, I asked her what she wanted to play with. We spent her time playing games and cooking dinner together, but throughout, Sarah stayed close to me, constantly glancing around nervously. At first, I thought she might be lonely without her parents or still nervous, but her behavior didn't change even after a few hours. So I asked her if something was bothering her. But no matter how many times I asked, she said, "No, it's nothing." And she didn't tell me what was on her mind. Sarah's behavior seemed like she was on guard against something invisible. Only when it was time for me to go to bed did I finally understand what that meant. Sarah changed into her pajamas, opened the door of the closet with a smile, and said that she was going to sleep early today and leave for my house in the morning. In the closet, there was a bed. I couldn't figure out when it had been prepared. As I was trying to grasp the situation, Sarah quickly lay down on the bed and said goodnight while trying to close the door. "Hold on, Sarah, are you going to sleep in there?" I asked, my voice raising with surprise, to which Sarah answered with a serious face. "Yes, but it's okay. I'll leave it open just a little. If I hear anything, I'll wake up right away." Hiding my confusion, I invited Sarah to sleep with me. After some hesitation, Sarah finally agreed and joined me in my bed. She said that she wanted to leave the bed in the closet as a hiding place. I didn't understand why, but I told her it was absolutely fine. As cheerfully as possible, I asked her why she needed a hiding place. After making me promise not to laugh, she whispered, "The monster will come." Just hearing that might make you think she was still a sweet, innocent girl, but the story that followed was enough to make me believe in the existence of this monster. Sarah was shaking, clutching onto my arm. "The monster is really scary and clever. It only comes on the days when Daddy isn't home. If the monster comes, Mommy has to fight it off, and I mustn't leave the closet until she does. Mommy always cries while she's fighting. I once tried to help her, but I got so scared when the monster started banging on the closet door." I hugged the trembling Sarah and sighed deeply in my heart. Probably this monster does exist, and it's not some trick to get a child to bed. Discovering my brother's wife's affair in such an unexpected way made me feel lost. If this monster was my sister-in-law's lover, it wouldn't come to this house while she wasn't around. However, Sarah believes that the monster comes on the days when Daddy isn't home. Today, while my brother is away, the evidence is that she stayed close to me all day, guarding the windows and entrance. Considering my kind-hearted niece Sarah and my brother who trusts his wife, I felt a surge of anger towards my sister-in-law. But more than that, I wanted to reassure Sarah right now. I held her hand and smiled at her. "It's okay, Auntie's here today. You said the monster is clever, right? Then it'll be surprised to see a stranger and won't come into the house. And your mommy, who is always targeted by the monster, is with Daddy today, so the monster can't get close to her." Still, Sarah, who does not know the true identity of the monster, keeps her face clouded with anxiety. The more time passes, the more she begins to fear that the monster will attack soon. She suggested we hide in the closet together, so I tried to calm her down by encouraging her to share anything that worries her about the monster. I thought she would eventually get sleepy as I take away her fears one by one. However, when I heard more from Sarah, I knew I couldn't just sit back. Instead of putting her to bed, I immediately took her out of the house without changing her clothes. I rushed home in my own car and explained the situation to my husband and arranged for him and his friends to stay overnight at Sam's house. Around 10 p.m. on the day that my husband and his friends went on their way, I received a phone call from Sam asking about Sarah. "Has Sarah already gone to bed? You shouldn't forget about your husband and daughter once in a while, and have a good sleep. Make sure you lock up the house. Good night." After asking about Sarah, he told me to lock the door before I go to bed. He strongly warned me not to leave the house, and it took all my strength not to let my voice tremble. After ending the call, I looked at Sarah, who was sleeping peacefully with my daughter, and vowed to drive out the monster. The next morning, my husband returned from my brother's house. I trembled with fear and anger at the sight of my husband telling me about the events of the previous night. I was relieved that my judgment the day before had been correct. My family spent the rest of the day at home with Sarah, waiting for my brother and his wife to come pick her up. Upon seeing me, my brother sternly questioned why Sarah and I had left the house at night. "Why didn't you sleep at our house? I asked you many times not to leave the house, didn't I? You said you understood, but what were you thinking when you just went home on your own?" The protest from him, accusing me of breaking my promise, made me feel uncomfortable. I coldly asked him why he, being on a trip, knew that we were not home. Then he replied while avoiding eye contact, "Well, we gave Sarah a smartphone with a GPS function." If that was true, he wouldn't have insisted so much on not leaving the house during the phone call the night before. If he had checked the GPS, he would have easily known that we were not at his house. Suppressing my urge to confront Sam immediately, I continued the conversation quietly so as not to be heard by the kids in the other room. "By the way, 2 unknown men came to your house late last night. Who are they? Why would they come to a house that's supposed to be occupied only by Sarah and me in the middle of the night?" "Suspicious individuals? I'm glad you're safe." His voice was trembling, but it was not from the fear of the suspicious individuals or the relief that his daughter was safe. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully, and his gaze was darting around. "Hey, about those guys." I pressed my brother, who was not giving clear answers about who those men might be, but my voice was cut off by my brother's wife, Kate. Whether she was worried about us talking any further, she began calling Sarah forcefully and said they were going home. When Sarah, who had been playing in another room, heard her mother's voice, she came out. Kate pulled her hand away with obvious strength. Then Sam suddenly changed his attitude and said, "I don't forgive you for what happened, but I'm leaving today," and began to push Sarah back to leave the room. My brother and his wife tried to force Sarah to leave with them. When I tried to talk them out of leaving, they ignored me and did not even look back. Seeing Sarah reaching out to me in resistance to her parents, I hastily pulled her towards me. "Hey, what are you doing?" Caught off guard, Kate let go of Sarah's hand and cried out, but I shielded Sarah behind me, putting some distance between us and the couple. They spouted aggressive words, attempting to reclaim their daughter, and stormed towards us in a rage. My husband and I managed to force them out of the room, asserting that we would never allow them to take Sarah away. A police officer who had been waiting at the entrance instantly detained the couple. The police officers were trying to calm my brother and his wife, who were totally confused by the unexpected situation. Sam insisted to the officer that we should be the ones apprehended, claiming, "They won't give back my daughter. My sister and her husband took her from our home and are keeping her here. Please rescue her quickly. This isn't the time to hold me down. I won't run or hide, so let me go." Our daughter, who had noticed the commotion and came out, hid behind me and spoke with Sarah in a baffled manner, discussing that she was not looked up at all. Not sure whether Sam heard their conversation, but he sternly told Sarah to come with him. But she was too frightened by her father's intense anger to leave my side. Kate simply stood quietly next to the officer, glancing at my brother as if she had something to say to him and Sarah, but didn't. When my brother, who was causing a scene at the entrance, was completely restrained by the officer, my husband held up his smartphone in front of my brother's eyes. Noticing this, I told Sarah and our daughter to wait again in the previous room and close the door to keep the sound from leaking. Once my husband confirmed this, he silently started playing a video he had filmed at my brother's house the night before. Upon seeing it, the couple's faces instantly turned pale. The video began with the house key slowly turning and 2 men, apparently using a duplicate key, quietly entering the room. The men, in a good mood from their appearance, greeted my husband and his friends, mentioning my brother's name. "You guys are guests too, huh?" they said. One of them joked, "Hey, how much did you pay? He said I could get a 30% discount because the woman is his own sister, haha." They looked at my husband and his friends with a smirk on their faces. When my husband's friend gave a vague response, avoiding a direct answer, one of them boasted about the specific amount of money. He said that they were good friends with my brother and his wife and that they were able to get a discount from them. They continued, "We're lucky we get to play with the kid today, too." And the man's profile as he laughed was hideously villainous, to the point where calling him a monster would be an insult to a monster. I couldn't see the screen from where I was, but the audio alone was enough to give me goosebumps. Afterwards, my husband's friend started grilling the men, asking if they often visited his house and if they always came in pairs. They seemed to notice something was amiss and started asking where Sarah and I were. Upon seeing my husband's angry expression as he stated we weren't there, they seemed to finally realize the situation. Realizing they were not among friends, the men hastily fled. It was unclear whether they hadn't noticed my husband's recording until the end or if they had intentionally not disclosed it. It seems like my brother, who is supposed to be a close friend of them, has never heard of the video before. He is trembling. He desperately insisted he knew nothing and was being framed. Until I watched the video, I thought my brother was innocent and that my sister-in-law had planned everything. But there's clear evidence in the video that my brother Sam handed over to me and little Sarah. No one was convinced by him pretending to know nothing, and he was taken away by the police. Kate was pretending to have no involvement, but the officers who had previously heard from Sarah had many questions for her, so they requested her to come along, and thus Sam and Kate were both taken into custody. Later, during the police investigation, Sam and Kate confessed everything and were arrested on the spot. Apparently, Kate used to invite men over to her house on the nights when Sam was working and received money. Once she realized there was a particular demand for children, she took advantage of Sarah, making sure not to violate the law. To help her mother, who was being bullied by some nasty people, innocent Sarah did as she was told and posed for photos. These were mere pictures of a child with no suggestive connotations whatsoever. Kate would take these innocent photos with a disposable camera, have them developed, and then show them to her clients, instigating a kind of bidding war. Moreover, she would only lend out the photos, never selling them. As much as I despised her for this, if that was all there was to it, it should have ended as a matter of no concern to my husband and me. When Sam noticed Kate's business, he didn't scold her or try to protect their daughter. Instead, he started to gather men who would become their clients. He figured that if he increased the number of employees, the revenue would also increase. With this simple logic, he decided to involve me in his business. Of course I would never agree to this if he simply asked. So he came up with a plan to force me to work and use photos from the scene as a continued threat. Thus, they carefully picked a day when the neighbors were not around and locked me and Sarah in their house. Then they exchanged their house key for a large sum of money and left on a vacation to prove they had nothing to do with what was happening. What Sam and Kate didn't foresee was Sarah, who used to obey Kate's every word, revealed the situation to protect me. Sarah didn't understand most of the conversations happening at home, but she knew that the nasty people were targeting us. She confided in me, and that's when the hellish situation in Sam's house was exposed. That night, after learning about Sarah's situation, I asked my husband to capture the nasty people's activities on camera. Their unguarded information spill helped the police to act immediately after I reported them. At the same time, I made a report to the Child Welfare Services to ensure Sarah's safety. We informed the police about Sam and Kate coming to our house and had them arrested, finally protecting Sarah from the two of them. My brother and sister-in-law, who were arrested on severe charges such as violations of child welfare laws and the laws to prevent prostitution, did not escape imprisonment despite being first-time offenders. The pictures of the child that had been taken and stored over several years were deemed particularly egregious. Once an image is leaked on the internet, it can never be removed completely. I was chilled to the bone when the police told us this, but luckily, because Kate hadn't digitized the photos of Sarah or sold them and had kept them securely stored, we were able to prevent any leaks. I don't understand how my once kind and reliable brother Sam could turn into such a horrific person. We had been helping each other out normally up until then, and it scares me that we had no idea he had become so twisted. Anyway, I hope they will face the reality of what they had done. After the arrest of Sam and Kate, the monsters who were likewise questioned by the police later seemed to argue that they were innocent since it was just an attempted crime. However, the fact that someone's child's photograph was found in their house and that they seemed to be involved in some kind of other crimes confessed by Sam and Kate during the investigation led to their arrest on multiple charges as well. After dealing with the monsters and their associates lurking around us, we then inquired at the Child Protective Services about what would happen with Sarah. With both her parents arrested and no one to care for her, it was decided that Sarah would be taken away from her parents, who were absolutely unfit as guardians. That was a relief, but Sam and I don't have parents, and my sister-in-law's family has cut all ties. We learned that if we can't find someone who's willing to take her in after reaching out to the family of my sister-in-law, she would have to go to a foster care facility. After consulting with my husband, we decided to adopt Sarah. She was, after all, a person I owed a lot to, and I didn't want to part ways with Sarah, whom I adore as if she were my own daughter. Luckily, my husband agreed, and we took this opportunity to move to the countryside where my in-laws live. My daughter was excited to spend more weekends with her beloved grandparents and was overjoyed that her wish for an older sister came true with the arrival of Sarah, whom she adores. Finally freed from her parents, Sarah, with her remarkable adaptability as a child, is already getting used to her new environment as an older sister and is starting to live a peaceful and happy life.